Now, onward to the portrait critiques. I'm going to start with this one. Rule number one of any painting ever that you're ever going to do for the rest of your life is give yourself some canvas space. You have to think, even at that level, you have to think about the canvas space, an available canvas, breathable canvas space that you will allow you to work with the right amount of space so that your image doesn't seem too constrained or too claustrophobic. Um, so it kind of has that feel right now. What happens when you shrink your canvases prematurely, or you start with a small canvas. What happens is the head size is sacrificed, and you see how. Try to see it before I start making any corrections. Try to see how the head size is really, really, really small for the face size. Now you might have noticed this already. This is from Vesta, by the way. I think they're with us right now. Um, every time I say that, I swear I feel like I'm in a seance. Yeah, try to give yourself some space early on so that you don't overcompensate to fit the image into the canvas size and have your head be disproportionate to the face in the head shape. Always start from larger shape to smaller shape. So choose your canvas size. Guys, listen to me. I'm serious. Listen, after you choose your canvas, do a quick sketch or a quick throw of your brush. Say, this is how large the head will be. It will not be any larger than this. And then after you've decided how large the head will be, jump in and start drawing the eyes and the face. Please, please, please don't start with the eyes first without a head or any sort of skeletal structure underneath it, because it will not force you to sort of combine everything together as one big biological unit. You're going to be dealing with every feature as if it has a spotlight on its own, and what that is going to force you to do is spot rendering, as well as treating like everything is coming from a different light source, because you just feel like drawing one eye in one light source and the other in another. When you treat the whole head as one big unit, you treat it as one big unit form, meaning that it's one big piece of clay that you use. It's the same piece of clay you used. It's just one big piece of clay, and you carved stuff on that clay, but it's still that original piece of clay you had. It's not you got one day you made one eye, and the other day you sculpted another eye with a piece of clay, and then you combine them together on another day. That's how some of you paint. Some of you paint each feature separately and then combine it by blending. That's a really backwards way of drawing, because you're not treating the whole head as one big form. Remember the difference between I was almost going to say the 5th of November. I'm such a nerd. Remember the difference between the square and the cube. Really, really important difference to remember. The square is the 2D representation or illusion of what a square looks like in our memory. It's the stamp, the line-driven stamp. A cube with shading and value attached to it. However, a projection it is of the three-dimensional realm, it is an accurate representation of what happens in the 3D world, like taking a photograph. So that's what you're doing right now, guys. You guys are imitating what happens in the real world. So remember to treat the whole head. This is lesson number 1 of today for portraits. Please treat the whole head as if it is one big unit. Is everyone with me? Technically, this means you pick work based on the lesson, right? There is no specific lesson. It's sort of like a freestyle. If someone gave me an environment, I will give them an environment critique. I'm just saying there haven't been any environments, so the theme today is portraiture. So I'm going to try to focus on that today. Any questions so far, guys? For YouTubers, please, I'm so sorry for this pause. I have to wait for the message to be sent to me because there's like a lag. It's not an immediate thing. It takes a while for them to hear me and then a while for them to respond, like 30 seconds to... Nope, no questions? Okay. I do tend to ignore the chat. I'm very sorry. So lately I've been trying to force myself to look over and see if there's any questions. All right, so let's jump into Liquify. Okay, sorry. I always forget to stop the layer. Oh, someone on YouTube suggested to me that I duplicate the layers, work on one layer, and then just turn off one layer and we get the before and after look instead of having to scroll back. Thank you for that suggestion, by the way. I really appreciate it. That's really proactive. I like that. All right. So what we would need to do is right now the size you have here is just the forehead. This is just her forehead space, her hairline. That's what you're representing with this. So what I would need to do is morph it upwards so that we have her actual skull considered into the biology of her head structure. Her eyes don't just float on their own and then you just have a circle shape around it and that's supposed to represent the head. No, there's a whole system above where the brain sits, and where what you had before was, if it happened in real life, would be an actual deformation. I believe it's called Marfan syndrome if the head is too small. And I try to find the equivalent of disproportionateness in the real world because it is possible and there are actual genetic deformations that lead to that kind of issue, proportion-wise, if an arm is too small or a leg is too large. And what that does, essentially, what the biggest clue, if that happens in biology in the real world, is it affects function. And function is the science behind this form that we're working with. A human body functions. And so that's what you're doing when you're shrinking the head size for no reason. Is you're decreasing the function. It looks off. You've rendered it so well that it's actually looking like a girl with a head size that's too small, like she's actually sick or suffers from a serious disability. Um, and we don't want to do that accidentally. If we want to create someone with a disability, we want to do that intentionally. We don't want to create accidentally disabled. Nothing against people who are disabled. I'm just saying be aware of the disproportionateness that you're representing in your images and that it will read as a real disproportion because you've rendered the face so realistically. We have to believe it because you've done so well on the face. Good job on the face, by the way. I love the shadow. I love the eyes. I love how you've maintained the skeletal, the dips and the skeletal structure. Um, Skeleton is hard, and any flesh that wraps around it will wrap around it and adapt and inherit the dips and valleys and mountains that are inherent in the skeletal structure. So the skeleton isn't malleable. You can't bend the skeleton. Unless, of course, you have a genetic chromosome that says you can. But for now, we don't. And the head, the skeleton, the whole upper part of the skeletal structure has dips in it that you have here. The darkness in between the eyebrows, the heights of the cheekbones, the fact that the eye sockets are actual holes in the skeletal structure, the fact that the skull is a hollow thing, where a bunch of other biology sits. Try to remember, again, function and how that reinforces the proportionateness. But good job on the eyes and the nose and the lips. Let me just jump in a little bit for some more critiquing. I'm going to get my soft brush. I'm sorry about the soft look that you get after I do critiques, especially if I'm sending you the paint over his back. It's just that soft brush gets the job done quicker than any textured brush, or else I'd be here for like 3 hours dealing with these critiques. A little bit more of darkness is needed in between the eyebrows. Remember that the head is divided into 4 main quarters, the 2 outer quarters that face the edges. So please remember these because I can't keep drawing them throughout the critique. So this is the cube, this is the front part of the cube, this is the side of the cube, excuse me, I just hiccuped like really quietly, and these are the edges that move back. So at this point the head starts to move back, so if there was a light here, the light wouldn't sit on this half of the face, it would sit on this part, and if the light was a bit more tilted coming in this way, it would sit on this part and sort of on this part. So remember there's actual edges, like a cube has an edge, the face has edges as well, and you have to adhere to those when you're adding hair, when you're adding eyes, when you're adding lights and shadows, when you're adding props like tattoos or whatever. They wrap around the three-dimensional shape of the head. So one of these areas here is the eyebrow. It's part of the first 2 front faces. So 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 on the sides. So part of the eyebrows are going to get some light on them, especially because the brow bones point upward. And then the eyebrows themselves sort of tuck back toward the bottom. Right now you have them a bit extended. They tuck toward this edge, this invisible edge at this point. That is only visible when you have three-quarter view. When you're drawing three-quarter view, you see this edge where the eye socket dips in, the cheekbone pops out, and the area under the cheekbone dips in and the chin pops out. But here we're not seeing it because it's a front view, so that's sort of what makes it difficult to draw something that suggests the fact that the head is square shaped, or cubic, when we're looking at the face head on. So still sculpting around the edges. The face didn't have that much edge. It's this edge is sharpest near the cheekbones because the cheekbones are more bony. At that very height of the cheekbones, at least, are more bony than the lower parts of the cheeks where they're a bit more fatty. And so we have to like fatty. So we have to sort of blend it a little bit more smooth, make it a gradual tone instead of a harsh tone like we have at the top here. And then of course there's the shadow of the nose. The nose is the most protruding object on the face, and so it needs not only a cast shadow, but it needs the lightest spot on it. And if you squint your eyes, you did well. The nose is the lightest spot on the face, so good job on that. The lips are part of the light spots. The light spots, as I call them, the cousins of the dark spots, they are the spots in the face that are the signifiers of the face. So it's what a viewfinder in a camera, or like the face portrait finder in a camera would have. It's sort of like something is telling the camera, or the camera's programmed to look for 6 dark spots shaped in a triangle, and then light spots shaped in an upside down triangle. So you've got most of the triangle or a diamond. And that's sort of all the lights that happen on a face because of the contours that happen on a face. So these light spots are the cheekbones, the nose, the 2 areas above the lips, the chin, the brow bones, and the eyelids. If you want to get detailed, it's the inner area of the eyelid here as well. So tiny bit of correction, before, after, before, after. And we've given the head more dimension. We've made it seem like her head is popping out of the image. Her head is way bigger now because we've extended the canvas, so we no longer have to compensate and make the head size too small so that it can just fit in the canvas. You're all afraid. You fear the edge of your canvases, don't you? You guys are afraid of it. What do I do when I reach the edge? It's like you've reached the end of the world and you guys don't know what to do after. Sometimes if you don't have space, goddamn, don't do it. Just let it cut off in the canvas. Don't try to make the head more try to make the head fit in to a point where you're shrinking the head down to like an unbelievable size. So again, thank you for that suggestion with the layers. I don't know why I didn't think of it myself, but there you have it. I'm an idiot. So before, after. Okie dokie, guys. Another thing that helps the head pop out a little bit better is secondary light source. So where we find that is on the edges of the face, like I just told you, the sides of the cube that curve out, right here where we catch some individual light on the sides of the face, just like so. And this happens to faces. It doesn't matter what kind of face you have, as long as it's a human face, you will have that cubic nature. As long as it exists in the real world, it will have sides and edges to it, and there's no doubt about that. And sometimes these edges, depending on the skeletal structure or the sculpt of the face or the kind of head we're dealing with, it will have really sharp secondary light source clashes happening. And if you guys don't know what those are, there's a video available on YouTube about what those are and what happens with them and why they happen. Good job. Let me point to some stuff I really love. I actually used the blue for that because you guys hate the big red marker. Good job on showing me that there's a bottom eyelid. Good job on the shadow of the upper eyelid on the eyeball. Good job making the eyebrows fuzzy and textured, but not too textured or not too detailed that we're dealing with tiny little fishbone lines to represent the hairs. You just threw in a general texture and it reads as I forgot the word, as an eyebrow. Good job with the nose. It reads to me. Good job with the lips. Also reads. Minor little issues that you might pick up later on are like the shadow of the bottom lip on the chin. Sharper shadow where the nostril shadows come sort of source the shadow of the nose. So it's sharper the closer it is to an object. A little bit more fuzz on the insides here of the what's it called? Of the eyebrows. See, I forgot the word again. So try to remember all of that, and before I molested your image, I'm going to just fix that up. Okay. So I'm going to leave you to it. I mean, just before and after again. Really, really small head. Okay, so I'm going to flatten this image and send it back to you. If I don't send you back your images, please, 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 guys, everybody, I don't know how many of you are here right now. All 40 of you. That's a lot. Please remember to message me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page where you can talk to me directly no matter where I am in the day. I've got my cell phone. I will talk to you guys. And if I don't send you back your images, please, please, please message me on Facebook. It's got a nice little thing where I can just drag and drop the image and send it to you. Also, before you guys leave today, please, if you want to be on, you can also send me this on Facebook. If you want to be on the email list for when the next stream is available, and if you want to respond to me through email for your critiques, please send me your emails on Facebook as well. I will send them in a way where no one else can see your emails. I just recently learned how to do blind carbon copy, so no one will see your emails. You won't get some weird little advertisement about Viagra. So if you guys want to be on your email list, please. Yes, my Skype exists, but I don't give it out anymore because of last time I gave it out, I had like 500 contacts, and these people add me and they just never talk to me again, and so I had to delete a bunch of people, and I feel bad. Also, the group got really big, and I wanted to shrink the group and make it a little bit more concentrated towards art instead of just one big chat room. So if I feel like you guys are not really worthy of being in the group, just more concentrated and really serious about your improvement, as in the future for concept artists or whatever, I'll throw you into the group. But as for my Skype, it's not really open for the public, but my Facebook is, and you guys can contact me there. And if I feel like you sort of need this sort of additional contact with me, like all my tutoring students have my Skype, I will give you my Skype. It's not like exclusive or anything. It's not some sort of exclusive club or like inner club or something. But it's not worthiness, please. Yeah. Send me your emails on Facebook so you guys can get the live stream announcement earlier. Okay, this is beautiful. It makes me want to cry. It's so well done. I'm not sure if I messed up the background. Is this how the background was originally drawn? I'm not even sure. Who sent me this, by the way? Minnie Pantsu sent me this, right? Minnie, is this weird looking to you? Is it weird? Like, did the background like have some weird shit happen to it, or is this how it looks? This is not how you painted it, I'm sure. Yeah, can you send me another link, but this time I can download it, please, because I want to work with a larger version of this. This is a screenshot of what you sent me originally. If you could, yeah, the soft brush doesn't read very well on the screenshot device that I use. Yes, I also agree with Istebrak won't ban me. Can you send it to me? Dang. Let me see if it's still on my Facebook. I'm sorry, guys. 1 minute. So this weather, huh? When's it gonna be summer? Starting to think this is advertisement for Game of Thrones, season 5. Okay. Messages. I think you're Matus Marcus. Download. Okay, I'm downloading it now, so don't worry about uploading it anywhere else. Okay, thank you. Alright, so for this piece, as someone said earlier, the eyes are a bit too large, and what happens when the eyes are this large is it looks cute, because that's the thing. with large eyes. You can make them huge and it'll still look good for some reason because these are proportions that are accessible to us in the real world. So when you look at a baby's face, you look at a cat's face, look at my cat's beautiful face. Um, you look at some really, really cute seal. Seals are the cutest things in the world, second to Ossie. Um, and what happens is that because the proportions are possible in the real world, our eyes read it and accept it, and it still looks adorable and cute to us. However, when you see a face that has extremely large eyes, at that point, yeah, you accept it, but there's a tiny bit of uncanniness to it that it's hard to accept and think of as looking good, quote unquote. So what I would do is I would shrink the eyes just in scale. I wouldn't repaint the eyes. I wouldn't redo the eyes. I wouldn't rethink the expression. All of that is beautiful. All of that is spot on. Like, congratulations, because it's a beautiful painting. But the size of the eyes is really, really, really bringing it down. The reason why, like I said, it's not accessible to us, this size and eyes. Even if I shrink it, her eyes, if this was a real girl and you were drawing a caricature of her, not a caricature, sort of like a likeness of her, her eyes would still read as big in the real world. They would. It's just that where you had them before was way too big. So this is still considered big. Like, if you want small eyes, there are people with eyes that are this size in the real world. A little bit closer together though, but there are people with this size eyes in the real world. So where she was after we corrected them, still huge, but if you compare it to where they were before, dang it, I need to teach myself to do the before and after faster. So where they were before was a bit large, especially if we zoom out and you guys take a look at it. They were a bit big then. I'm trying to shrink my. Okay, there we go. So before, after. Yes, they look smaller, but this time it's more of a realistic likeness to them. There's more of a realism to them. There's a bit of a distortion that I caused over here. I'm just going to pull it out. But remember, guys, I know you want to make something cute, but there is this evil little shadow that whispers in our ears. It's the anime evil shadow. And nothing against anime. I love anime. I draw anime. I watch anime. Look at my Instagram and you'll see. But anime is this. It can only exist in the anime world. It can't exist everywhere else. It can't switch worlds and go turbo. What it would do is affect our ability to render something realistically, because anime is so line oriented. It's so flat, and it needs to be flat in order to remain anime. It's really difficult to transfer anime style lines and textures into the real world without getting rid of them and only keeping the anime proportions. And even then, at that point, we have to shrink the eyes a little bit so that they make a little bit more sense. So the reason why these eyes are so large, maybe you have an anime background, maybe you thought anime was cute, maybe this was inspired by something that was anime, but still, at that point, please be aware when you are accidentally doing something. I know that's stupid for me to say, like, be aware of what you're not aware of, but make the effort to be aware of it, and the best way is through critiques. People will tell you, or just not even critiques, again, show it to your grandma. She'll also be able to tell you that these eyes are a bit big. But let me praise this just a little bit. I love the way you made the eyes look hooded. I love hooded eyes. I love drawing hooded eyes. I think they're beautiful. And so this little lack of eyelid you did, and the way there's a gentle little upward buildup of the fat above the eye is so beautifully rendered, and it reads so well to me. There's also that gentle eyeliner fuzz that you had happening, sort of like a blur. I also love that very much. I love the way you've blended the skin tone around the nose to represent that the nose is a bit pushed in. What I mean by that is, let me jump into the resources folder. Something that always helps me explain it is this picture here. If this lady finds out I've been using her picture, she'll probably sue me. But well, that day will come when it comes. One of you, if any of you are lawyers, you can help me out. But okay, so you see here her nose is, this is before and after her rhinoplasty surgery. Before, she had a button nose. And if you were to see her, damn it, I opened the same picture. If you see her nose from the side, before when it was a button, you can see this almost blended nature of the way her nose looked. It sort of blends in with the sides of her face a little bit more than when she had installed her nose bridge and she got rid of that button nose. However, noses like this do exist, especially on Asian faces, which is why nose bridge surgery is so popular in Asia, as well as eyelid surgery to get that extra eyelid going. But this here actually does happen in real life, and that's why it reads to me, because you blended it. So good eye on that. It really, it's pushing the fact that this person is from this particular race, and the likeness is very well done. The nose could use a bit more definition. Now that I shrunk the eyes were sort of pushing that triangle of cuteness. Now that I shrunk the eyes, I need to push this nose back up toward, to stay inside. And what pushing the nose up will do is it will shrink the triangle down, making him look a bit more cute, because the less long the triangle, so the triangle I'm talking about is, this is the top of the triangle and this is the tip of the triangle right here. If the triangle is very long, it will be a mature cute face. If the triangle is short, like a cat, sort of like a really squished triangle, it would be a super young cute face. And so if you're going for that look, you're going to have to push the nose back in and shrink that triangle down. I'm just trying to fit the lips in just a little into that triangle as well. So now that we've fit the nose in, before, after, he looked very mature, like an older boy. Like, I don't know how to really explain it. Like, it's possible to have these features, but before, after we move the lips upward, sort of fit back into that baby face. So after doing that, I'm going to talk about definition for the nose. Right here, it seems like the nostril and the structure of the nose and the sides of the nostrils, as well as the nostril cavities, are all one big shape. And that's not how a nose functions. A nose is many shapes combined together, to work, to function properly for the nose to smell and to sort of get the smell before your eyes do, so that they can warn your eyes that there's a skunk nearby. Another thing is the light spot around the lip area. You might want to consider adding that in, because the lips are so, again, I don't know a word for the lips that are plumpy, pushy outy lips, I don't know. But those kinds of lips stick out, sticky outy lips. And so what happens is that they catch the light as well as the nose. So the area of the nose here needs to catch some light to further the definition of that area of the nose, as well as I'm going to push the lips down just a little bit. They seem to be overstated just a touch, because there's no spot here for the Cupid's bow. And again, think about function and how the function is being damaged in these proportions. Think about how your function is damaged. And then after that, I just throw in a shadow for the nose that sits gently over top everything. The shadow of the nose is sharper the closer it gets to the nose, and softer the further away it gets. That's just a rule of how lighting works around opaque objects that stand in the way of the light. Since the top of the head is underneath some hair, we're going to need something to reinforce the fact that the hair is working as another opaque object standing in the way of the light. So what I would do is just throw some gentle shading right here. First of all, in between the two eyes, and then shading around the head. I'm also just going to add a slight little suggestion of a nose bridge just near the top, because even that lady that I showed you had a bit of a nose bridge just at the top, just to show that there is still a skeletal structure, because in your skeleton there is also a nose bridge, but it's only at the top of the nose. If you guys see here, this nose bridge area, it's only at the top, so that's always going to be there. And this is the dip that I talk about. If light was shining this way, there would be a shadow in between the two eyes. These are the cheekbones that stick out and catch the light. But this is the nose bridge that's not cartilage, that sticks out. This is, of course, a different kind of skeleton, so it's sort of an exaggerated version of a human skeleton. It's probably like Homo erectus or whatever. Yeah, just think of it like that. Also, the face moves away from the light, and half the face is one large core shadow. So think about the object that is the head, again, as one unit, one form unit, and all the light is shining on that one initial form unit. So if you're painting from largest to smallest, which you should do, You should treat the head as one big large object and then slowly add the details of the features. So when you're treating the head as one big large object and you want to make it look 3D, you have to cast some shadows. And so one of the core shadows on the head is half of the head being in shadow and the light shining from above. So before you add in, imagine a piece of clay that you had. Half that piece of clay would be in shadow and the light shining on it. And then eventually you start carving in the eyes and the teeth. And the mouth and the teeth. But initially this was the shape that you started off with, so you have to respect the initial core shadow that represents this shape as a 3D shape. Don't miss out on the core shadows. If you do, the face does not look right. The lighting does not look right. And for someone whose vocabulary in art isn't that furthered or that experienced, they'll just tell you it doesn't look right. But I'm here telling you it's because your core shadows aren't in place. You have to find your core shadows and point to them. Another thing about presentation is the fact that you've got intense texture, beautiful texture that reads so well, don't even touch it anymore because it's perfect. And then you've got the super soft, super glowy background. Try to create the equivalent of that with a textured brush, because at this point we have two major axes, major extremes, major ends of the spectrum, of the texture spectrum, where we have super not rendered, super soft, and super rendered and super textured. And it's just really confusing and bad on the eyes. So get the background, give the background a little bit more texture, please. Don't just leave it as soft. And don't do too much bleeding on this character. There's only so much you need for us to know that he's standing behind some light, or in front of some light. So a little bit of bleed on either side of his head would do well, instead of having soft light moving all around him. So before, do you see how the face wasn't rendered very well? The eyes were a bit large, the nostrils were a bit undefined, as well as the nose. The triangle was long, too long for his face, so his face looked like it was too small for his head size. So that's another thing you guys are learning today, is make sure the face fits inside the head. So don't draw the eyes first, guys, and then draw everything around the eyes. I know we all love to do that. I do that. I used to do that. But after I realized there was a serious issue and everything was gravitating towards this first eye that I drew instead of gravitating around the form that this eye was sitting on. So don't forget that. And then after, the face does look a bit more scrunched, but those are the proportions that I had to work with. Shrinking the eyes and pushing the face back up makes the face a little bit more realistic to me. Also, pushing the eyes together after we shrunk them, there's a little bit left to be desired, or how do you say it? How do you say it? Little to be desired in between eyes wise. And so we need to see a little bit more space closed in between those two eyes. Beautiful job though on the way the under eyelids work with Asian faces. Very, very beautiful. So before, after, just pushing them in closer together. We're getting a bit sort of more precise proportions compared to before. Before, after, before, after. Adding those extra little lip lights make the lips look a bit more protruding to me as well, and they make them feel like they're real and that they're under a real light source. I would also cast some light, like pure shadows, like sharp shadows over here, but that is of course your decision if you want to throw in that kind of sharp light over top all of this texture. So it would be something like this, but that is your choice. A bit softer than that, but that is your choice, of course, depending on the kind of light source it is. So I'm going to flatten this and send it back to you. I hope that was helpful. Yeah, it's just a bit more cross-eyed. You're right. But again, with crossing eyes, if you're crossing them in a way, you can get away with really crossed eyes as long as you're crossing them in a way where most of the eyes still fit in half of the eyes vertically. So if you cut the eyes in half, as long as they're still fitting in there. If they're really crossed and there's too much white showing in the eyes, at that point it's going to start looking a bit cross-eyed. But especially with cute heads and cute faces and that anime look, or that anime influence look, you can get away with cross eyes very, very quickly. There is this. I'm not sure if you use a reference. I'm not sure about critiquing anything with references in it. I'm just trying to find something similar. That's why I'm wary about the ones where you use references. I'm going to look at this one. Okay, so for this you're dealing with three-quarter view, and three-quarter view is very, very tricky. First of all, I did a big lecture last time I critiqued about presentation and background, and being careful about the kind of background colors you guys are choosing. This background color, yes, it does complement her eyes, but it is too much of a statement, especially with this gaudy blue color that you can find only in no man's land. If you really wanted to give her that complementary tone, you want to give her that tone that is sort of working from a, a reasonable gray area of the background, then you can give it to her just like this, and it would still complement her eyes, and it would still complement the composition. However, where it was before, it was way too bright. It was too bright. I was seeing way too much saturation. And if you had that early on, it pushed the saturation of the head way up and the saturation of the skin to keep up with the saturation of the background. So maybe that happened. Maybe you added that first, because as soon as we gray out the background a little bit, what we notice is that her eyes are, and her skin has serious reds in it and seriously oversaturated skin tones. Remember, skin is not that bright, and it doesn't have an opportunity to be that bright. If you skin, you remove the blood and you remove the muscles and you remove the veins, all that's left is like this really yellowish, barely have any color, fleshy thing. That's creepy. But that's what skin is. It doesn't contain that much color in it. The only color it gets is from blood. So unless she's been running for like 10 hours straight, and not even 10 hours, like she'd have a blue face by then. But unless she was running for an hour exercising and she was out in the sun and she got a tan and she's wearing blush and she got bit by a spider somewhere over here, or a mosquito, and she'd been itching it all day, it wouldn't be this red on the skin. You need serious interference for that to happen on the skin. So I'm just going to remove that for you and sort of give you a background color that you can trust that will be better than white or neon blue. Please don't paint with white backgrounds, for the love of God. What that also does is it forces all of your values to just skyrocket, and it's not a good place to be with your work. If you're drawing so well and you have this really nice thing happening, and with the portrait and the believability of the character, and all of a sudden you have to deal with this background color that does not match anything at any point in time, unless it's a graphic choice, unless it's for some sort of design purpose that you're doing the background this bright, but you never really need it this bright. So I'm going to show you a background color that you can use. It's this. This is sort of like a deep close-up, not deep close-up, but a close-up of her head. And so, I mean, the presentation is a bit off, the fact that you're choosing this particular cutoff for the composition, but let's just focus on the portrait. If you do want to make it a portrait of her, give us more of her bust and make the image less landscape and more vertical. So we would have a vertical cutoff. So what I would need to see is this kind of cutoff, at least, just so that the close-up is completed, because it seems to be a bit off. It seems to be going nowhere. Actually, I'm just going to cut it off now. Dang it. Actually, I can't cut it off because of the befores and afters. So, Control C, go back. Alright, let's continue. Saturation. For the skin, I'm just going to get the sponge tool and put it on desaturate. And I'm literally just going to desaturate all of this. It does not need to be this bright for it to read as skin. Just going to desaturate the eyes just a touch. They're really, really oversaturated and overstated. You see, I'm desaturating so much and they're still reading as blue. So you can only imagine where they were before. It was just way, way too bright. Everything else was also so dark and so balanced, and you had this really, really bright skin. Alright, what I'm going to do now is jump into liquefy and talk about skeletal structure, sort of. So this eye is too big, and that's something that happens a lot with three-quarter view, any attempts for three-quarter view. And the reason why that happens is because you guys forget to calculate how the eye what really happens to the eyes. Eyes don't experience foreshortening in three-quarter view. They do not. There is not enough space between both eyes so that we can actually see an actual atmospheric perspective foreshortening happen. There is compression, and there is stacking, one object in front of the other object. However, there is no foreshortening. It's not like some fisheye lens or some crazy shit happening. Please don't do this mistake. There's no foreshortening, period. Meaning the eyes, the size, if there is any foreshortening, it's decimal. It's so small that it's barely noticeable. It's not even worth it to attempt it. You just don't have enough pixels for that. Um, uh, the way to represent an eye, two eyes in three-quarter view, is to just compress the eye, not shrink it, and not make one eye bigger than the other. There is no eye closer to you than one other eye. They're both on the same object, and that object has the same distance. But those two objects on that one object have the same distance in between you from you. So there's not going to be enough space for foreshortening to happen. So one eye is not going to be bigger than the other eye. Please remember that. Another thing is the placement of the eyebrows. Nothing changes. Nothing really changes. The only thing that changes is the side of the nose and the side of the lips. Everything else pretty much stays the same. You do see certain sides of the eyes that you haven't seen before. Of course, they're not exactly the same shape and proportion anymore. Things do change. You see different sides of the cubes that isn't everything. But just don't foreshorten anymore. So right now I'm just trying to make the eyes the same size, trying to balance the eyebrows on that symmetry line, trying to balance the nose along a symmetry line, the lips, the lip corners along a symmetry line. Good job on the lips. Nice job making the upper lip darker than the lower lip. Make sure it's not too dark that it actually looks like she's wearing lipstick only at the top. And finally, I'm just going to before and after now. Do you see what happened to the eyes before? They were not sitting on a horizontal line. They were not doing much together. If you were to look at her face from the side, from the front view, one eye would be lower, one eye would be higher, one eye would be dragging downward, and the other would be going up. So please remember, guys, think about your symmetry, think about your form, think about the structure. What really happens is foreshortening really even possible. And right now I'm just still trying to balance these. I have to flip the canvas a little bit. They were just miles apart from each other. But the way you drew the eye, she looks very, very beautiful. It's a very beautiful gaze happening, very romantic gaze. And that's really, like, there's a passion, a definite passion in the way you drew her that is definitely prevalent. So good job on that. Also, I'm going to try to define the side of her eyes, or the sides of her cheekbones to fit in. By the way, when I do show the befores and afters, unless you're the artist that drew, don't laugh, because only jerks laugh. And don't say LOL, and don't say wow, holy crap, and don't say that, because we're here to learn. So if we create this kind of toxic environment, we won't be able to learn together, and we'll fail. So please, if you guys do find it some sort of amusing to look at the befores and afters, first of all, remember we all come from someplace. If you guys see my original paintings, you guys, trust me, everybody has these mistakes and everybody makes mistakes. So no one is exempt from making mistakes. So please, unless you're the person that drew it, do not in any way express the fact that this is entertaining for you. Unless you are actually entertained, like, God damn it, unless you're like entertained wholeheartedly and you're actually having a good time. But as for entertainment at the expense of another person's self-esteem, that won't go here. You will be called out. So be kind to each other. That's all I'm saying. Right, so I'm just still balancing the skeletal structure, thinking about that skeleton. Proportions don't change. I don't know why the three-quarter view is so stressful for some students. It doesn't really, nothing really changes. It's just the sides of the cube that we're seeing. As long as you're thinking about the cube, everything is really easy. Now I'm not pointing at any specific person in the chat. Remember that. I'm just saying. So we're looking at before and after now for the colors. Do you see the saturation? And the reason why the saturation was pushed up so high is because of that background color that was happening. Or maybe you chose the background color because you chose a too saturated eye color. Or I don't know where it started, but don't oversaturate. The colors you had before were way too high. Right now we've dumbed down the colors a little bit, but still they're all the way in no man's land. They're still high. So they must have been neon before. They must have been super neon. What I'm going to do now is just get a color layer, and I'm going to choose one skin tone, yellow base, sort of olive, and just throw it over think I'm going to sneeze. Throw it over the skin here, just to try to balance all the skin together. Remember, guys, that skin tone is governed by one original base tone color, and all the little complementary purples and reds and oranges, all of that is barely visible. None of that is really there, in a point where we can actually point to where the reds are and where the greens are, unless we're really, really looking. So if you guys shouldn't have, it shouldn't be on the map where the reds and the purples are so apparently. Apparently, I don't know. It should be a little bit more subtle. So again, all of the basic shadows, the light spots and the dark spots should be there. So shadow of the nostril. Thinking about where the light source is from. So I'm thinking the light source is coming from the side, some sort of Rembrandt angled light. So the side of her nose would technically be a little bit lighter because the light is coming from the side. And after I did that, I sort of saw the disproportion happening in the nose. I'm just evening out the sides here, where the chin fades into the neckline. I mean the jawline, and then the chin needs some light on it. I'm going to lighten up the upper lip just a touch. And I'm going to bring in the reds soon. I'm sorry I'm working with a soft brush. It is taking away from the textures. I'm going to bring in the reds in a second and show you where to place the reds. I have a ton of videos on how to paint skin. Not a ton, maybe two. But still, they're really helpful in explaining why I'm doing certain things. Also, when you're doing eyebrows, please don't just draw the eyebrow in there as if they're drawn in with a Sharpie. Give them some shadows. If they're drawn in with a Sharpie, they're not actual hairs casting shadows. If they're real hairs, they're actual hairs casting shadows. So we want to see that a little bit over here. There is no light under this eyebrow. If there's no light under this eyebrow, there wouldn't be light under this eyebrow. The light only exists on the top part of the brow bone up here. The eyes are still too large for me now that I look at them. Just going to have to keep adjusting it until they sort of fit in with the rest of the head. She's sort of coming to life a little bit. The skin tone is more believable. The forehead needs also some variation. It also looks like one big flat shape. Remember where the light source is coming from and where the real bulbousness of the forehead is. It's near the top. So that's where the light is going to hit first, and then it's just going to fade away for the rest of the time. It's there on the face. There's also going to be a shadow from the hairline. And then there's going to be a shadow here under the hair. And everything's just going to sit under shadow where her hair covers her head. Over here. There's also the shadow of the upper eyelid that needs to be there on the rest of the eyeball. Please don't forget that. It's really, really important. Important shadow. It makes the eyes more believable. It makes it feel like that the eyelid is actually there, casting shadows like everything else is. All of the stuff I just did with the eye, those 3 little strokes, I have videos on that. Just little tricks I teach on how to make the eyes a little bit more real. Lower eyelid, good job on drawing the lower eyelid. I will compliment every artist I find that draws the lower eyelid because it's like the forgotten lid. People forget to draw it all the time, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it did something to them. I'm going to darken the lower lip a little bit, and then I'm going to refocus the nose lighting towards the light source that's coming from the side here. Remember, you guys, remember this. Remember. If you're drawing features, remember that you might be drawing each feature to a specific light source you have in your head. You're not going to be following the same light source, meaning you're going to draw the feature with the light source you're remembering it being in when you first studied that feature. So you might be drawing the nose with like a completely different light source. That's the only way you know how to draw a nose, with light coming from the top. And so you're going to do that accidentally and not realize you're doing it. Beware. I'm just going to give the nostrils a bit more definition. This shadow on the face is too much. There's a lot to do. When you're oversaturating, you have to dull everything down because all the features you painted them with that original oversaturation. I need to zoom out. Sorry, guys. Zoom out just a touch to connect the light sources together. Now I'm going to bring in some reds. Color mode. I'm going to choose a red that is from this area. Bring the slider down a little bit, and I'm only going to place it in the areas where I really feel like she needs some reds. So a little bit on the cheek where you had it before was a good choice. A little bit on the lips. A little bit on the nose. A little bit on the upper eyelid. Right over here. One eye is still lower than the other. I'm going to bring in some yellows, basically like an orange. I'm going to place it on the areas the light is touching because the yellow light and purple shadows. Warm yellow light, purple shadows, unless the light is blue. And then I'm going to bring in a purple, which is like either you get a really dark red. Dark red has purple in it, or blues, or you just get the purple. But make sure you're working on color modes, and I'm just going to place it. Be careful with the purple. I recommend getting the red if you're just starting out. I'm just placing it over here. I also need to desaturate her neck because that was oversaturated. Okay, and then flatten the image. I'm going to jump into liquify one more time. Just trying to balance them, make sure everything is sitting on the horizontal and vertical lines properly. Give her nose a little bit of a shrink. Flip it back. Save. Okay. When you guys are working with this kind of stuff, I don't recommend adding a background layer at all. Like, don't be so desperate for a background layer or a background, or it's not that important especially if you're going to be going in the field of character design. You're not going to be hired as the environment artist. You're not going to be hired as the guy in charge of making the backgrounds, making a believable landscape, and designing three-legged tarantulas or something, or ostriches. I don't know. You're not going to be in charge of that. You're going to be in charge of the character. So don't be so worried about the background this early on. Look at what that gray background did for us. It made it look professional, made it look clean, made it look nice. Stop thinking that every one of your little paintings is an opportunity to express everything you know about everything that is art. If you don't know how to do backgrounds yet, leave the backgrounds for another day. Focus on your portraiture. Give us a good showcase. Give us a good, clean portfolio. Don't go throwing big squares and big blobs of nothing in order to express your awareness that this might need a background. If anybody tells you I'd like a background, say no. I am only presenting this character. I do not wish to add a background. Why? Well, Istebrak told me so. If you have a problem, go mess with her, and she'll tell you why. Let's talk about what I really, really love about this painting. First of all, the expression was beautiful. Second, I love the way you drew her outfit. It's not plain. It's not understated. There's actual something going on here. I love the little sewing details you've added here. The little, the kind of texture. It feels like actual leather. Good job on that. I love her hair. I love the big pieces that you used to express her hair. I like that you didn't use tiny little strokes. I love that you left the strokes over here for the hairline. Good job, good job, good job, good job. I love the expression. You just need, I didn't even change up her eyes. I didn't repaint her eyes, did I? No. Did I repaint her lips? No. I reassigned everything on a skeletal structure. So the basic diagnosis, if I was your doctor, I'd say you need help. On understanding the skeletal structure and basic proportion. That's all you really need help with, Sarah Louise. So just focus on that, and your presentation will be just as good as this and better. I again forgot how I merged it, so I again forgot how to. I'm very sorry. All right, so let's look at the before and after. Before, very, very messy background. You don't need it. Trust me. Just have faith. Close your eyes, jump in feet first, and trust me. Leave gray backgrounds because I want you to focus on your values. You're jumping into color. If it wasn't for color, you'd be working in grayscale, and then you'd have a real gray background. So you're not ready for environment. You're not ready to place a character in environment. Fragment your learning process. Focus on one character at a time, one unit of design at a time, and stop worrying about the background. The proportions, the skeletal structure, all misplaced. And the not all of it, and I didn't even touch the hair. Good job on the hair. And the oversaturation of the skin tones. Super saturated, not from a very familiar or safe place on the map of the color wheel. Look at these. Look at where all this is from. It's all the way from no man's land. And if you look at the ones that I chose for you, from a way more friendly, lower mid-tone area. Everything is from a lower area on the map. So the eyes, really, really overstated saturation-wise. You don't need them stated for me to see that she's got blue-green eyes, right? So tiny little corrections, good for presentation, good for portfolio. They'll get you hired, no question. Just show that you have an organized way about your technique. Don't make messy choices. And if you weren't aware you were making messy choices, now you are. And that's it, really. I have lots of videos on how to paint a face in 3/4 view, my teaching style, my way of talking about sort of how to make eyes look pretty, or how to make a face look like it's actually from 3/4 view, how to think about, get that money, how to think about compressing instead of foreshortening. All of that is available. Not real foreshortening, remember. Okay. No foreshortening. I mean, it's a compression. It looks like foreshortening, but it's not. It's not. All right. Yes. If I said no, you would have lost all of that. And I was just about to say no. Okay. I'm going to talk about this image now. I'm not sure I have time because we only have 30 minutes left. Okay. It is too dark. You said to me it might be too dark. It is. Again, the same thing applies to you. If you're just working with character design, don't worry about the background. Don't worry about the environment. Don't worry about making it a scene from a movie. Please, please just worry about the character only, because that'll save all your stamina, your art stamina, for one thing. So even now, even for this, I recommend just making the background gray. I recommend it. Oh man, it's going to take me forever to sort of find all of this. No, it's not going to take me forever at all. Okay, sorry. Drama queen. Let me get a good background layer, mid-tone, somewhere from here, and just do that. That way you can focus on the character. That way you can focus on the fact that this character is the main, the real deal here, and we're trying to showcase this character only. We're not going to be worried too much about what this character is, what environment or what room this character is in. This way, if you have a good background layer, you can, if you're not messing around trying to figure out a background layer, you're going to choose a dark background layer or a too light background layer, or what we saw previously, a too saturated background layer. So all of that is going to lead you to making a mistake if you're not familiar with how to put a character in a background. Learn how to paint a character first, and then learn how to paint a background. That way you can combine the two later on with a little bit of knowledge about environment and light and what happens in objects if they're sharing the same light source, the same airspace. But for now, don't worry about that. Just worry about the character. Get the values right. I'm going to desaturate this chica. I'm going to show you sort of where you have your main issues. Your main issues are the fact that the skin tone is too dark. So if she was in real life, she would be a darker skin tone. I'm not sure if you're going for that. Also, this means this part of her face is from a darker skin tone, and this part of her face is Caucasian, from a lighter skin tone. So what you're having here is a pigmentation. It's reading as pigmentation instead of an actual gradual tone that's happening on the face. Also, the only colors you have on the face right now is the green and the beige. So if you're this, and I'm sorry I'm saying it, this is what it looks like to me. If you're this afraid of jumping into colors, if you're this cautious that you're using super desaturated tones and dark tones, it means you're not yet ready to jump into color. whether or not you feel like you're ready. You probably are somewhat ready. However, I want you to be ready. So to get ready, you have to focus on grayscale for a little while. In many schools, including FZD, including Imaginism studios, like the classes that they have, nearly all of them are teaching you, unless it's specific to color, are teaching you in grayscale. So, like, take that as a sort of sign that there's a serious amount of knowledge to be learned about painting, scan, and form, and anything in the grayscale level, because you have to understand the values under the colors before you venture into the colors. Um, so yes, please remember to work in grayscale from now on. I'm going to flatten the image. I'm going to show you sort of how to work in that grayscale in a second. So select inverse. First of all, your darks are too dark, so I'm going to get your lightest tone, and I'm going to place it over all of the darks. And then your lights are too light, so I'm going to get the darkest tone after I choose the lightest tone and make them a bit darker. So after I sort of made everything sort of sit on the same level, the eyes are a bit dark in this area. So don't go too dark too soon. Don't go too light too soon. Same mantra over and over that I always talk about. What I always say. I'm trying to balance the skin tone so it seems like she's from the same sort of place. Also, the way you shaded this cheekbone doesn't tell me that this cheekbone here on the side looks the same. So you shaded it as if these two cheekbones are completely different. One of them is really edged out, so if in the side here we would see a serious edge happening in her cheekbone, very masculine in shape. But we don't see that. We see a softer edge happening, which is something that happens a lot with three-quarter view. Okay, so I balanced her skin tone. She's sort of coming from the same ethnicity. I'm throwing some basic light sources and shadows. These are all light spots and dark spots I talk about. I'm going to jump into liquify now. I might make the class a bit short actually because I'm starting to feel winded. Talking for a while really takes my voice, and I have tutoring after, so I don't want to lose my voice before I have to get to a student. But you see here how we have something of a harsh edge. We want to see that on this side as well. So we would push this cheekbone in, and that way what we get is an equivalent in bone structure. So what the bone structure is we're reading a bone structure that is similar. I'm just actually going to sharpen this and sharpen this. Now we're getting a bone structure that's a bit similar. Also, the general image is too dark, so I'm going to push the values way up, and then I'm going to go back and darken the darks that are really, really dark. So the iris, the pupil, I mean, the nostrils. These are the dark spots I always talk about in the lip corners. You can opt out one set, but you just have to sort of work around it. The lash line is usually dark when makeup is involved. So it's part of the dark spots of the upper eyelid. And everything else is pretty much just, I'm sorry about the soft brush, everything else is pretty much a step down from the darkest darks. So you can never go darker than these darks. And this is us not going too dark too soon. You have to sort of build up you're going this dark. The nostril, the nose shadow is way too dark and way too defined. We need a sort of softer nostril shadow. And it needs to represent the actual size of the nose. So if the nostril shadow is so big and the nostril is small, then what's the nostril shadow representing? We have to make sure the nostril shadow, or any shadow cast by any object, is equivalent or proportionate to the object casting it. I'm going to soften this cheekbone area up. The forehead needs a little bit more light. Also the shape of her hairline, like her hairline is sort of misplaced as well. It seems like she shaved off certain areas, so I'm just going to tuck that back in. I did cut off some of her hair, so I'm just going to add in some hair over here. Okay, now I'm going to get some lights, and only place the lights again where I really need them, and I'm going to build up toward where the light source is. So everything is pointing towards the light source. So the forehead, the lip, and all of that. Now we're getting a really balanced grayscale happening. And that's really what's the most important. I'm going to throw the shadow of the upper eyelid. I'm not sure if you had it before. I'm going to bring in some of that light and throw it on the eyeball where the light is touching her eye. Some light on the inner corners of her eye, on her brow bone. And any area that's curving away from us into the distance behind gets a shadow happen to it. Select inverse. Just like that. So do you see what I'm doing? I'm balancing the values before I even attempt color. The reason why most of you say, hey, I've been painting I've been painting in grayscale and I went into color recently and all my colors are muddy. And I'm like, well, because you're not done with grayscale yet. You still have a lot left to learn, because the biggest rule is that you have to understand the values that allow these colors to come through. If the value is dark in the color formula, then the color won't be able to come through, and light equals saturation. So don't forget that. You need a little bit more time. Your colors look muddy, and that's the diagnosis. So what you need to do is focus a little bit more on your values. You've got faces down, you've got portrait features down, you're done. A little bit more here, just a little bit for the lips so they look like they're on the same horizontal plane. So one lip doesn't look higher than the other. You just need a little bit more time on your values. So this is a lot of information today. It might be overwhelming for some of you. I am sorry, but it's a lot to cover, and the real world has lots and lots of physics and lots of stuff to deal with. And that's what art is. That's why it's so hard. You have to paint what happens in the 3D world, and you have to imitate it and project it, and create like the illusion of the 3D world onto just 2D paper. So you lose a dimension. Okay, you did try to paint metal. Good job on the form. Nice job outlining the sort of stone-like structure of her outfit. Good job on that. A little bit of trouble with the values. Just focus a little bit more on values. Don't worry too much about color for now. Also, places where her dress has a bit of a shiny material to it will get some sort of highlight happening on it. So I'm just using my my dodge tool here, and I'm just throwing in some areas of highlight that happen on the metal. Metal has like streaks happen to it depending on where the light source is. So it would happen here on the edge, it happen over here. I know I forgot to make the extra layer. If anyone's reminded me, I'll do it in a second. We also place a little bit of highlights on her cheekbone, just where oil might be sitting on her face, on her nose. You can hear my voice breaking. Oh, crap. Okay. So this is a bit light. I'm sorry. Save. Okay. So you're going to see the before. Before and after. What we did is work with values. We ignore the colors. The colors are muddy. You need a bit more time on your values. They were way too dark. So before, after. These values are friendly. These values will give you a chance to go dark only when you need it. So some dark on her hairline, some dark in between the areas of her helmet and her neckline. I mean, not her helmet, her little armor thingy. You can only place the darks where there is zero light approaching it, or zero light touching it. And that way what you get is sort of realistic presence of the light source. So not everything is that dark. And that's it. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Bye-bye.